Hello and welcome to Benefit News. You're here with me, Marilyn Gore, and we're on the Benefit News podcast. Today we have with us a very special guest, Judy Frater. She is an educator, a reformed academic, and has been working in the design space with rural artisans in Kutch for the last 30 years, is it?
Yeah.
Or 40?
Well, 50 if you count all of it, but 30 living here, yeah.
All right. So she's in town right now to launch her book. This is the latest one. It's called Artisans by Design. Can you see this? Yeah. So this is the book she's here to launch. It documents the last few decades of her work in Kutch. And we're here to talk about her work and her book. We'll start with the book.
Sure.
So Judy, tell us, why now?
Why now? Well, actually, it takes a long time to write a book. And I started writing it in 2018 and finished writing by early 2020. And by the time it got published, it was the end of 2024. And so, if you're really concerned with accuracy, you're like, oh, no, it's already old. But, it's a history, so it's ongoing. And, I think I did a book launch with the artisan designers who have gone through the design program that the book is about. Mm-hmm. And I told them that for me, there are two motivations for doing something creative. One is to set the record straight, and the other is because you have so much information accumulated that you just need to put it down and get it out there. So, yeah, both of those reasons.
So, do you want to walk us through a few highlights on the book?
Well, the book covers, I think, why I felt there was a need for a program in design education for artisans, what were my motivations and early experiences, and I think it's really about co-designing. It's about me learning from artisans, from working first as an academic, doing research, learning, and then thinking, well, maybe I think this would be useful, testing it out, artisans learning from me learning from them, learning, and we're all learning together and turning into butter, right?
You said this is basically a labor of love. So can you tell us a little more about what's in the book?
Yeah, it starts from my upbringing and how I started with craft in my life, and how I went to India and began to meet artisans and see that although craft had been perceived as a form of inferior form of manufacturing, still there were artisans alive who did understand craft as their cultural heritage and as art. And then how I started Kala Raksha as an income generation project or program, and then added in a museum and developing designs and education programs, and then felt that there was a need for a design school. Started Kala Vidya, which was the very first design school for artisans. And then when I felt that it had kind of reached its saturation point, I joined forces with the KJ Somaiya Gujarat Trust, and we reinvented it as Somaiya Kala Vidya. And I very, very carefully ensured that transition was smooth, because by then we had built important, valuable resources. We had, first and foremost, the body of graduates, the alumni, and I wanted to make sure they were carried forward too. And also the faculty whom I trained with a lot of effort over time, and the supporters, and who else? Everything, the whole package. And I wanted to ensure that it transitioned very smoothly. And then I really appreciate the support of the Somaiya group in enabling the Institute to grow from there, because as Kala Raksha Vidyalaya, all I could do basically was raise the money to keep the program that I had started going. But now I could expand and do outreach programs and start open studio tours, workshops, courses to teach others about craft and understand it more deeply, and programs like that. So, and then I look at some of the continuing challenges of, even with so much tremendous amount of success, I still feel that there are challenges. And every year during the jury, I would set up a seminar for the artisan designer community, again, trying to keep them together as a community, to discuss some of those challenges that I felt they were facing in not controlled, but in a safe environment. I always tried to create a safe and nurturing environment in which people can share openly and honestly. And so then, and the whole book, the most important thing is that it's told through vignettes of artisans, because it was a co-design. So each of these challenges that I'm talking about, each of these chapters is represented by my story interspliced with stories of artisans. So the idea is to enable the reader to experience. Rather than being didactic of me telling you, I want them to read and then come to their own conclusions, see why things happened, experience it.
I was just skimming through it a little bit, and I noticed this one mention that you're talking about when you say make it traditional, and you ask which tradition.
Yes. I mean, blew my mind, and here's this village woman telling me that. So I could see, how she understands it. And that takes time. That's, all that took a lot of time. You have to spend time if you want the real thing. In doing my research on Ribaris, which was my second master's degree and my first book, I was almost done writing, and I knew I needed a few details. I came back to India and I went straight to the village, this one Ribari village in Patan, and they said, "Oh, wow, haven't seen you for a long time. Come in. How long are you staying?" And I said, "Well, I thought I'd go back on the bus tonight because I just need to get some information." And the Ribari man said, "Sit down." He said, "Information isn't such a thing like a fruit that you pluck from a tree. If you want, you have to come, you have to stay, you have to eat with us, you have to have tea with us. Then you'll get your information." And I'll never forget that.
So when did you decide to stay longer?
Oh,
I'm assuming it wasn't about the chai.
I don't think I ever stayed longer in the village that night.
Yeah.
That night I did, of course, but I never said I'm going to live in India. I just kept renewing my visa for 30 years. Yeah.
But you've recently moved back, right?
Yes, in 2020 I did.
I mean, quite often when you think of an artisan or a karigar, you think of somebody who needs to be told what to do. I think that is something that you've been working very hard to reverse.
Well, yes, because when, starting out in research, that's not true at all. If I can, kind of give you the Cliff's Notes. In Kutch, at least, artisans originally had fixed hereditary clients. They worked for them. They had a very close relationship, and they knew who they were making for, and the artisans knew them personally also. Mm-hmm. So it was a relationship that was far beyond commerce, right? And there was always fluidity. There was always innovation. There's always innovation, but it's subtle and it's slow and it's appropriate. And when industrialization was introduced in India with a big bang at the time of independence, I think, if I may conjecture, that industrialization was seen as a very important part of the way forward, and craft was swept in as an inferior form of manufacturing. And I think at that juncture, there was an opportunity to see craft as rather a form of cultural heritage, of art, but instead it was seen as livelihood. And then along with industrialization came design as an entity. Design is an industrial concept, as something separated from creating, right? Artisans always designed, but it was a part of creation. And so making it separate so that there's a designer and then a maker and then, immediately a machine maker, an industry. That bringing that to craft meant that people felt that they had to give direction, intervention to
We've heard that term a
craft.
lot in recent years.
it's
Design
always,
intervention.
It's always associated with craft. I don't think it's associated anywhere else. And it's like, to me, it's nails on the blackboard. It's an awful idea that why do you need to intervene? And, if you look at all of the fabulous textiles in museums all over the world, just start here at the Calico Museum. And who designed them? I did a short course at NID one time, an elective, and I asked people who, showed them some textiles, who designed them, and they were stumped. Because we've gone so far from seeing the artisan as a creator, as a creative person, to seeing them as a worker, that people literally cannot understand that artisans can design, which flips me out. And, when I started the design course, inevitably I got two questions, one back to back. Oh, so you're teaching them craft? No, actually they do craft. They could teach you craft. We're teaching them design. Oh, so you're giving them designs. And those two questions frame what people perceive as the capability of an artisan. And there's just so much more. And I think also when someone intervenes and gives a design to artisans, they're missing out on the best part, which is that creativity, all that cultural heritage that includes knowledge and science and social studies, everything, aesthetics, right? And
but do you think that aesthetics can vary from the artisan to the final consumer in today's day and age?
Yes, it does. I mean, look, it was always a co-design. So when an artisan, say a weaver, was making a dablo, a blanket for a rabari, they shared. One important thing is that they shared the same sense of aesthetics, the same criteria for evaluation. So the motivation was always to do better. When your client no longer shares that, there's no motivation to do better. There's motivation to do good enough, right? Or even a little less if they don't know the difference.
It's a question of let's see how much we can get away with.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's a spiral down as far as even how you understand yourself, your self-esteem. So I think, I had a conversation with a Rabari woman, a friend of mine and a longtime informant, just a few days ago. And I said, I was talking because I did a book launch in Delhi and I was preparing her for some questions. So I said, so what's the difference between innovations that you yourself do and those that come top down? And she said, look, I know what's in my mind. You know what's in your mind. I don't know what's in your mind, and you don't know what's in my mind.
I would assume that, the whole concept of a design language comes into play here. Because if I explain, like this morning I was talking to some of your artisans, and we were talking about how nobody calls it tana mana anymore. So, the warp and weft, everybody now uses the English words for it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if someone from the outside comes in, now these people know their own motif, their library, they have their own. So if I don't understand what a particular motif means and I just ask them to put it in, it may not work that way. I mean, I don't want to offend anybody's sensibilities here at the same time. So does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the premise that I have on which I based this design education program is that I am empathetic. I think that's my best quality, right? So I can put myself in their place because I am a creative person too. So if somebody tells you to do this very specifically, it's not very interesting. You'll do it and just get done with it. But if they give you a problem to solve, then it's fun. Then it's exciting. And you need to be open to seeing something you didn't expect, which is fun. It's fun for everybody, right? And then you can work together. So instead of saying, draw an apple or weave an apple, you could say, well, this is probably not a very good example, but, what do you like to eat? What's your favorite thing? And can you make it in weaving or something like that?
Well, like we saw with the birds this morning. I thought that was fabulous.
Yeah. He had an idea to because of appreciating the environment, of finding out what migratory birds were in Kutch and making them and weaving.
I mean, I've never seen anything like it. So that was fascinating. So when you're talking about things like this, at the same time, there are some people that believe that sustainability in the sense of the word, it comes from a place of privilege, especially when you're talking about from the market perspective. Now, I might love what they're doing, but I might not be able to afford it. So then you have these bigger designers doing things like ikat weave, for instance, or rather than the ikat weave, sorry, I mean like the Olympic uniforms, for instance. These were ikat print. When concepts like this trickle down in today's day and age, not everybody can afford the original handloom craft, for instance. So you've got people doing an ikat print instead of buying ikat weaves. So do you think that it's good that people are still talking about these crafts, or how does that work? What do you think?
I think sustainability has everything to do with value. What you value, you will preserve, right? And I think if you're talking in the biggest picture of, maybe it's the smallest, simplest picture of sustainability, the issue is that we make, use, consume, and throw away too much, right? And when you talk about can't afford craft, when I talk to children about sustainability, I say, okay, suppose you have a budget of 1,000 rupees. So you could buy one thing at 1,000 rupees, 2 things at 500, 10 things at 100. Which is better? And, a lot of times they'll go 10, and then they think about it. And, so if you are planning to spend 1,000 and you buy one thing at 1,000, is it expensive? And will you take care of it? Right? If you don't need a closet full of things, if you have things that you really love, and if
that will last you forever.
Yes. And that original impetus was to do the best thing that would last forever, because people, the makers and the users, shared the same criteria. And fashion cannot be sustainable because the premise of fashion is to create obsolescence, right? So if you're running after fashion, you will need a closet full of clothes, and you're going to throw them away the next season and get another closet full, right? And that is not sustainable, and it never will be. So if you can get beyond that and know who you are, the original consumers of Ajrak, for example, it's a fabulous, gorgeous, very labor-intensive, museum-quality textile, and it was made for cattle herders living in the desert. Wonderful, right? So they had 2, maybe. Maybe they had a few, but one to wear and one to wash, right? And it wasn't expensive because that's what they had, and they wore it till it wore out. And they didn't need anything else because that was their dress. That was their identity. So wearing something else was not even a question. Right? So if you know who you are and what you like, you can pare down your need for stuff. This is a big, tall order, but it's something I think we can think about.
You mentioned value. A lot of craftspeople we've spoken to over the years, I think one of their common complaints is that the younger generation in their families or in their societies are no longer interested in learning these crafts. So is that where you come in, or are most of the kids who come to you, or when I say kids, I'm sorry, I mean the artisans who come to you, do they come from the same background, or do you have people coming in who don't come from a hereditary artisan background?
I should back up. Okay, so the program that I designed was specifically for working traditional artisans of Kutch, very specific. Mm-hmm. And there are plenty of design programs, NID, NIFT, IICD, so many. Now there are so many. But they're not really appropriate for artisans, even those that would like to be, because you have to know who artisans are, what their lives are like. And some of the very simple barriers are money, language, culture, time. So the existing urban design institutes don't fit in those categories, right? So I created a program that was local, used the local language, and cost very minimal amount. That meant that the burden was on me to raise the money to keep it going. And as far as time, it was made in modules so that a person who's actually working can take off about 2 weeks. That's what I felt, having worked with artisans already for a few decades by that time. And then they can go back and they'll have some homework, but they can integrate it into their ongoing work. And so those 6 2-week segments.
So there's no loss of livelihood at that during that
No,
time?
no. In fact, a gain, hopefully, because they can also sell, and they do sell what they make even as exercises. Also, there's no age limit. They aren't just children. They, no age limit and no formal education requirement. So the only requirement is being a working traditional artisan of Kutch. And then we started doing outreach projects elsewhere. But rather than bring everyone to Kutch and create a monolith, culture is essential part of craft. So we went to other places and started projects there. So let's see. I lost my train of thought.
Okay, apart from Kutch, where you said you've taken this to other places.
Mm-hmm.
So apart from Kutch, where a couple of them?
The whole idea of outreach came about because I was invited to be in a think tank on making the district of Bagalkot in Karnataka a model district. General Ramesh Halgali, retired general, is from that district, and it was being submerged, part of it, by a large dam, and he thought, this is an opportunity. We can make this a model district. And he brought people from all different fields, and I was chosen to come from craft. I said, okay, I've not been to Bagalkot, but tell me why I'm going. And he said, craft. I said, which craft? He said, weaving. I said, okay, I'm bringing a weaver. He said, okay. So I took one of the graduates of the course with me, and we went to Bagalkot. And I said, the first thing is we see what's going on here. What's the situation? And we went into a village, and we saw the weaving of ilkal saris. And my colleague Jentibai said, looked at it, he said, what if you change the colors? And the weaver said, no, these are our colors. He said, okay. So what if you change the pattern? He said, no, this is our pattern. And then Jentibai said, did you ever think of making dupattas? He said, no, we make saris. So Jentibai looked at me and he said, what's wrong with these weavers? And I said, I don't know. What should we do? He said, let's bring them to Kutch. So we brought a group of weavers to Kutch, and they saw what was going on. And there was just a serendipitous event that I happened to have a group of visitors from the U.S. who were in the village at the same time. So I brought them over to see the workshop going on. It was an exchange between weaver designers who had gone through the program in Kutch and these weavers from Bagalkot. And they were like, okay, that's nice. Is that a shop? And I said, yes. They zoomed into the shop and bought 2.5 lakhs worth of products in half an hour. And the Bagalkot weavers were like, we're signed up. So, that experience is really important. Talk is cheap, really. So they were brave enough to try. And then our graduates paired up with each one-on-one, and they developed, sort of co-created a collection, took it to the market, and then we worked back and forth with them from 2014 to 2000 till now. And actually, there is a branch of Somaiya Kala Vidya in Bagalkot now, which is an amazing development. That much benefit has happened over that time because of interaction. But, our graduates really understand design, and they understand the place of it in culture. So they were happy to go to Bagalkot. They did research. They enjoyed that. They said, okay, let's see what you used to do. Let's dig back as far as you can. And I was just talking to Jentibai the other day, and he said, when we went, they were using synthetic fiber. They had not used cotton in their lifetime. And he looked up, and there was a kalori hanging on the wall. It's a giant brush that they use to brush the starch on warps. Okay. And he said, what is that? And they said, oh, it's an old brush. He said, you used to do cotton because that's for brushing the starch on cotton. So like that, then they dug back, they found some examples, and It's very
I always thought
organic.
Ilkal was only done on cotton. I didn't know that you were doing it on synthetics.
Oh, it's been synthetic for a while. And it's also power loom as well as hand loom. And what we saw that first trip was that the power loom is more expensive than the hand loom. It's so devalued. And the situation of weavers was that if in settling a marriage, if someone came to a home and saw a loom, they ran away. Weaving was so despised. And after several years of this co-design outreach project, the weavers stood up and said, we want to weave. And that's huge. That's huge change in valuation of your culture and yourself. And they started wearing their own work because they wove it and they said, this is nice. I'll wear it. And I can afford it.
That becomes very important. So do you see a difference in the weavers there and the weavers here in terms of culture? The work culture, I mean.
I don't know. I you know what? People like to say, oh, this happened in Kutch because Kutchis are so entrepreneurial. I don't believe that. I think everyone loves to learn if it's presented appropriately, and everyone is creative. Everyone can be entrepreneurial if they have opportunity and motivation. I think you have to create that. And I haven't been to Boglecoat since 2019, but already I saw, like, after doing an exhibition in Mumbai and being successful, they said, what's next? Where shall we go next? You know? So that kind of, it comes from success. You have to build, whatever you do, you have to build in success. Do it small, do it slowly, but make sure that there's success, because that's the motivator that takes you forward.
Right. It was lovely having you with us. I mean, I wish we had more time, but you've got your book event to get to.
Yes.
And we need to get this out there as well.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
That was Judy Frater, and I'm Marilyn Gore, and you're with Benefit News. Thank you for joining us. If you like this, please share it with your friends. If you have comments for us, you know where to leave them. I'll see you next time.